The first week I worked at Harbor Point Medical Services, 3 people mocked my clothes before anyone bothered to ask what I actually did. One woman called my shoes retirement home practical. Another asked whether my cardigan had belonged to my mother. A senior manager looked at my plain canvas lunch bag and joked that the company should raise salaries before employees started bringing food in grocery sacks. I smiled because I had been told not to reveal why I was there. 2 weeks later, the chief executive stood in front of the entire division and introduced me as their new director of operations. The room became so quiet I could hear someone's phone vibrating inside a desk drawer. By then, I already knew who treated people according to titles, who did the work no one noticed, and who had been using polished clothing to hide poor decisions. I was 51 years old when this happened. My name was Elaine Porter, and I had spent 26 years in healthcare administration. The first week I worked at Harbor Point Medical Services, 3 people mocked my clothes before anyone bothered to ask what I actually did. One woman called my shoes retirement home practical. Another asked whether my cardigan had belonged to my mother. A senior manager looked at my plain canvas lunch bag and joked that the company should raise salaries before employees started bringing food in grocery sacks. I smiled because I had been told not to reveal why I was there. 2 weeks later, the chief executive stood in front of the entire division and introduced me as their new director of operations. The room became so quiet I could hear someone's phone vibrating inside a desk drawer. By then, I already knew who treated people according to titles, who did the work no one noticed, and who had been using polished clothing to hide poor decisions. I was 51 years old when this happened. My name was Elaine Porter, and I had spent 26 years in healthcare administration. I began as a receptionist in a small rehabilitation clinic. Over time, I moved into scheduling, billing, compliance, staffing, and operations. I had managed clinics during mergers, software failures, staffing shortages, and one memorable winter when a burst pipe flooded the records room the night before an audit. I was not glamorous. I was useful. For the previous 8 years, I worked as Regional Operations Director for a nonprofit healthcare network in Western Pennsylvania. The organization was stable, respected, and underfunded in all the ordinary ways nonprofit healthcare tends to be. Then my husband, James, died. He had been ill for nearly 3 years with pulmonary fibrosis. I continued working through most of his treatment because we needed insurance and because work gave me something measurable to solve. After he died, I lasted 6 months. Every hallway reminded me of the hospital. Every employee condolence felt kind and unbearable. My performance remained strong, but I had begun living only between obligations. So I resigned. I moved to Maryland to be closer to my daughter, Anna, and her 2 children. I sold our house, rented a small townhouse, and spent several months doing almost nothing beyond school pickups, long walks, and unpacking boxes I had no reason to keep. That was when Harbor Point contacted me. Harbor Point Medical Services operated outpatient clinics, imaging centers, physical therapy offices, and urgent care locations across Maryland and Virginia. The company had grown through acquisitions and was struggling to standardize operations. Their chief operating officer, David Chen, had worked with me years earlier during a hospital partnership. He called one morning. "I need someone who knows how to see what reports miss," he said. "That sounds suspicious." It should. He explained that Harbor Point's Mid-Atlantic division had rising employee turnover, scheduling delays, billing denials, and patient complaints. The division director had resigned unexpectedly. The company had several internal candidates for the role, but David believed the problems ran deeper than the official report suggested. He wanted me to spend 3 weeks inside the division before formally taking over, not as a director, as a temporary process coordinator. "You want me to go undercover?" I asked. "No fake identity, no lies. Your name will be real. Your title will be temporary and vague." That sounds worse. It probably is. He wanted me to observe how staff behaved when they did not believe I had authority. I disliked the idea. It felt manipulative. David said, "You can refuse, but I need an honest picture before I announce leadership changes." I asked whether employees would know I was being assessed for the director role. No. Then they cannot give informed consent to being evaluated by me. You are not conducting secret recordings or personal investigations. You are observing normal workplace conduct. I still hesitated. Then he described the turnover. 32% in 18 months. Schedulers leaving after 3 months. Medical assistants transferring out. Supervisors reporting that staff were resistant to accountability. I had seen that language before. Sometimes it meant employees refused change. Sometimes it meant managers refused scrutiny. I agreed under conditions. I would not misrepresent my experience if asked directly. I would not access confidential personnel records during the observation period. I would document systems and conduct, not gossip, and after my appointment, I would disclose the process to the division. David agreed. The clothing issue was not part of the plan. That came from me. After James died, I stopped caring about fashion. Not entirely. I remained clean, professional, and appropriate. But I had no interest in expensive jackets, heels, or handbags. I wore black trousers, simple blouses, cardigans, and comfortable leather shoes because years of hospital corridors had taught me feet matter. My clothes were not shabby. They were ordinary. At Harbor Point, ordinary became visible because the administrative headquarters had developed a polished corporate culture. The lobby looked like a boutique hotel, glass walls, white furniture, large abstract paintings. Employees wore tailored suits, designer shoes, and ID badges clipped to expensive belts. My first morning, the receptionist looked at my temporary badge and directed me toward the service elevator. The main elevators are for executive floors, she said. My assignment is on the 6th floor. She looked at my cardigan. Then the service elevator also stops there. I used it. The 6th floor housed operations, patient access, billing support, and regional leadership. My temporary desk sat near the supply room. The human resources manager, Nicole Grant, introduced me as a process coordinator helping with workflow documentation. Nicole knew my future role. No one else did. She was 38, careful, and visibly uncomfortable with the arrangement. If anyone asks about your background, she said, I tell the truth. David wants minimal detail. Minimal is not false. She nodded. I liked her immediately. My assigned supervisor was Melissa Crane, Senior Operations Manager. Melissa was 43, confident, polished, and one of the internal candidates for director. She wore fitted dresses, immaculate makeup, and shoes that looked painful but expensive. She shook my hand without standing. So you are here to map processes. Yes. Have you done healthcare operations before? Yes. What kind? Clinics, regional networks, acquisitions. She looked at my temporary title. Interesting. The word meant she did not believe me. She handed me a packet of forms. You can begin with scheduling workflows. Ask Jasmine for access. Jasmine Brooks supervised the central scheduling team. She was 39 and had worked at Harbor Point for 11 years. She wore bright glasses, kept 2 phones on her desk, and knew which clinics had staff shortages before leadership did. She also looked exhausted. When I introduced myself, she said, "Are you another consultant?" No. Good. Consultants ask us what is wrong, turn it into a slideshow, and leave. I have made slideshows. She smiled. At least you admit it. I sat beside schedulers for 2 days. The official workflow required staff to route requests through a centralized queue. In reality, clinic managers sent direct messages demanding priority. Certain physicians bypassed the queue entirely. Supervisors tracked speed but not complexity. Employees were punished for long calls even when patients needed interpreters or insurance clarification. The biggest issue was not laziness. It was conflicting authority. I documented it. Melissa reviewed my notes and said, "You are including too much employee commentary. It explains why the workflow fails. We need process, not feelings. People operate the process. She smiled patiently. I know you are new to corporate operations. I looked at her. I am not new to operations. Her smile tightened. Of course. That afternoon, I heard the first clothing comment. Two project managers, Brooke Ellis and Tara Monroe, stood near the coffee station. Brooke looked at my shoes and said, "Those look comfortable." "They are," Tara laughed. "That is what my aunt says before every cruise." Brooke added, "I wish I had the confidence to stop trying." They both laughed. I smiled. "Comfort and effort are not opposites." Tara said, "We are kidding." "I know." They became awkward. I returned to my desk. The comment itself was small. What mattered was the assumption beneath it. They believed my appearance placed me lower in the workplace hierarchy. Therefore, the joke was safe. Over the next week, the pattern repeated. A finance analyst asked whether I wanted the name of a discount tailor. A manager assumed I was part of administrative support and handed me copies to make. Someone moved my lunch from the executive refrigerator to the staff kitchen. The canvas bag became a joke. One morning, Brooke said, "Elaine, that bag is iconic, very farmer's market chic." I replied, "It carries lunch successfully." She laughed as though I had performed for her. Not everyone behaved that way. Jasmine treated me with respect. So did Carlos Medina, a clinic support specialist in his late 20s. Carlos had been passed over for promotion twice. He wore inexpensive shirts and kept a notebook full of unresolved problems. He showed me how clinic supply orders were delayed because managers approved them only twice a week. He explained that urgent requests were often hidden inside emails because the ticketing system was too slow. "Have you reported this?" I asked. "3 times. "What happened?" "They added another approval step." That answer told me more than the official policy. Then there was Priya Shah, a billing supervisor who spoke quietly in meetings and sent detailed follow-up emails no one seemed to read. She identified a denial trend linked to incomplete referral documentation. The problem was costing Harbor Point nearly $200,000 per quarter. Melissa's reports described denials as a training issue. Priya believed the intake form itself was poorly designed. I asked her to show me. Within 10 minutes, the problem was obvious. The form allowed referrals to proceed without fields required by several insurers. Employees were being blamed for missing information the system did not force them to collect. I brought the finding to Melissa. She said, "IT has a backlog. Then we need a temporary checklist. That creates duplicate work. It prevents denials." She looked irritated. "You are here to document, Elaine, not redesign." I apologized. That apology bothered me all evening. I had been hired specifically to understand and eventually lead, but the temporary role required restraint. Still, I could not watch a solvable problem continue. I asked Priya whether she had authority to create a pilot checklist for one clinic. She did. We tested it quietly with proper approval from the clinic manager. Within 2 weeks, incomplete referrals dropped sharply. Priya did the work. I documented the result. The midpoint began with a patient named Mrs. Dorothy Lane. She was 76 and needed follow-up imaging after an abnormal mammogram. Her daughter called repeatedly because the scheduling system showed no available appointment for 6 weeks. A scheduler found an earlier opening at another location, but the referral authorization was tied to the original facility. The call transferred 4 times. Mrs. Lane's daughter became angry. The scheduler, Maya Collins, began crying after the call. Melissa overheard and said, "If she cannot handle upset families, she should not be in patient access." I asked whether anyone had reviewed the case. Melissa replied, "We cannot make exceptions every time someone is emotional." I looked at the referral. This was not a routine request. The physician had marked it urgent. The urgency flag did not transfer between 2 connected systems. Mrs. Lane had been placed in a standard queue. I raised the issue. Melissa said the clinic should have called. The clinic said scheduling should have seen the note. IT said the systems were working as designed. Everyone's process was technically correct. The patient was still waiting. I contacted Nicole and David because the situation involved patient risk. We arranged the appointment within 48 hours. Mrs. Lane's diagnosis required treatment. The delay had not changed her prognosis, according to the physician, but it could have. David asked me for a preliminary assessment. I told him the division had a culture of procedural defense. People protected their department by proving another department failed. No one owned the patient's full journey. He asked about leadership. I said Melissa was intelligent and organized, but treated frontline concerns as resistance. I also said the senior team was rewarding image, speed, and presentation over operational truth. David asked, including clothing? I had not mentioned the comments yet. Nicole had. I said, the clothes are a symptom, not the issue. What is the issue? Status determines whose information is believed. That was the core problem. Employees with polished titles could dismiss those closest to the work. I had 1 week remaining before the announcement. During that week, Melissa prepared a major presentation for executive leadership. The title was Mid-Atlantic Operational Recovery Plan. Several recommendations came directly from my notes. Unified urgent referral flags, daily cross-functional capacity meetings, temporary intake checklists, supply approval changes. She removed the employee names connected to each idea. I asked why. This is a leadership presentation. The ideas came from Jasmine, Priya, Carlos, and frontline teams. They contributed observations. They created solutions. Melissa leaned back. Elaine, you need to understand executive communication. Too many names dilute accountability. Whose accountability? Mine. There it was. She believed leadership meant gathering value upward. I asked whether I would attend the presentation. No. Why? Temporary coordinators do not attend executive sessions. I almost admired the clarity. The presentation happened on a Thursday. David attended remotely. Melissa presented the plan as the result of her 90-day operational review. She had not led a 90-day review. She had read my notes. Afterward, employees congratulated her. Brooke said, Melissa is definitely getting the director role. Tara replied, she already dresses like it. Then Brooke looked at me. No offense, I said. Why would that offend me? She laughed. The next morning, an all-division meeting appeared on everyone's calendar. Subject, leadership announcement. Rumors spread immediately. Melissa wore a white suit. Brooke and Tara brought coffee and sat near the front. Jasmine looked resigned. Carlos asked whether I knew what was happening. Yes, I said. He stared. How? I was told. That was the first hint. At 10 o'clock, nearly 100 employees gathered in the conference hall or joined by video. David stood at the front beside the chief executive and Nicole. Melissa sat in the first row. I remained near the back. David spoke about growth, operational challenges, and the need for leadership grounded in patient care and employee trust. Then he said, over the past 3 weeks, one person has been working inside the division to understand both systems and culture before assuming formal authority. The room shifted. Melissa turned slightly. David continued. She brings more than 25 years of healthcare operations experience, including regional leadership, compliance, acquisitions, and frontline redesign. Brooke looked toward the executives. Tara whispered something. Then David said my name. Please welcome Elaine Porter, our new director of Mid-Atlantic Operations. For 1 second, I did not move. Not because I was surprised, because I felt the weight of every face turning toward me. I walked to the front in the same cardigan, black trousers, and comfortable shoes. The canvas lunch bag remained under my desk. Melissa's expression was controlled. Brooke's mouth opened slightly. Jasmine began smiling. Carlos whispered, "No way." David handed me the microphone. I had prepared remarks. I put them aside. I know this announcement is unexpected, I said. The last 3 weeks were designed to help me understand how this division works when people believe no new leader is watching. The room became uncomfortable. I continued. I saw employees solving problems without recognition. I saw departments protecting themselves instead of the patient journey. I saw good managers under pressure and weak processes blamed on individual performance. Then I paused. I also saw how quickly people decide whose voice matters based on title, clothing, age, and proximity to power. No one moved. I did not name Brooke or Tara. I did not need to. I accepted this role because Harbor Point has capable people. My first priority is to make sure information travels upward without losing the names of those who created it. Jasmine looked down, emotional. Melissa stared forward. I announced immediate working groups for patient access, billing intake, and cross-clinic escalation. Priya would lead the referral documentation redesign. Jasmine would lead scheduling governance. Carlos would join the supply workflow team. The applause began slowly, then grew. Not everyone applauded. That was fine. After the meeting, people approached me one by one. Some congratulated me warmly. Some became overly friendly. Brooke said, "I hope you know we were joking." I know. We had no idea. That was the point. Her face reddened. Tara apologized more directly. "I judged you?" "Yes. I'm sorry." "Thank you." I did not reassure her that it was fine. It was not catastrophic. It also was not fine. Melissa asked to speak privately. We went to her office. She closed the door. "This process was deceptive. I understand why you feel that way. You allowed me to treat you like a temporary employee. I was a temporary employee. You evaluated me without disclosure. I observed the division. David and HR evaluated leadership decisions." She crossed her arms. "You let me present your work. No, you chose to present employee work without attribution." Her face tightened. "You are going to punish me." "That depends on what you call punishment." She said she had earned the director role. I asked how. She listed years of service, results, executive exposure, and difficult assignments. Much of it was valid. Melissa was not incompetent. That made the situation more complicated. She had survived a culture that rewarded polished confidence and upward management. She learned to claim credit because she believed visibility was scarce. Understanding that did not excuse it. I said, "You have strong operational skill, but you treat information from lower status employees as raw material rather than expertise. That is management. No, that is extraction." She looked stunned. I offered her a choice. Remain as senior operations manager under a development plan focused on delegation, attribution, and employee engagement, or request transfer to another division. She said the offer was humiliating. I replied, "Being accountable is not humiliation." She asked for time. She chose to stay. That surprised many people. The stronger final confrontation happened 2 months later. We were preparing for a board review. Melissa had improved in some ways. She began naming contributors. She invited Priya into meetings. But old habits remained. During one executive rehearsal, she presented the urgent referral redesign as completed successfully. I asked whether the IT integration was finished. "Yes," Priya spoke quietly. "Not completely." Melissa interrupted. "The core function is active." Priya said 2 clinics still lacked reliable flag transfer. Melissa replied, "Those are edge cases." I asked how many urgent referrals moved through those clinics. Priya said nearly 18%, not an edge case. After the meeting, Melissa confronted Priya in the hallway. "You undermined me." Priya answered, "You overstated completion." Melissa said, "You need to understand when to speak." I heard it. I asked both of them into the conference room. Melissa became defensive. "We cannot take every technical concern to executives. We can take material risk. It makes the division look weak. The division is weak where the process is incomplete." She looked at me. "You are always searching for what is wrong." "I am searching for what is true." That was the final divide between us. Melissa wanted leadership to create confidence. I believed confidence had to survive accurate information. Then Priya showed us an email. 2 weeks earlier, she had warned Melissa that the remaining clinics were not integrated. Melissa told her to remove the issue from the board update because the director does not need unnecessary complication. I was the director. Melissa had hidden risk from me. I placed her on formal corrective action. She accused me of revenge. I asked whether she believed I would have ignored the same conduct from anyone else. She did not answer. 3 weeks later, she resigned. She joined a healthcare technology vendor as an implementation manager. Months afterward, she sent me a short email. I thought leadership meant being the person with answers. I am beginning to understand it also means not punishing the person who brings the question. That was not a full apology. It showed movement. I replied, I hope the new role goes well. The division changed slowly. Not because I arrived with perfect solutions, because we altered who was allowed to define problems. Jasmine's scheduling team redesigned priority rules. Priya's intake checklist became part of the software build. Carlos was promoted to process improvement coordinator after completing a certification program. Maya, the scheduler who cried after Mrs. Lane's call, joined a patient advocacy task force. We also made mistakes. Our first daily capacity meeting lasted 45 minutes and wasted everyone's time. We shortened it to 12. A new performance dashboard created anxiety because employees thought it would be used for discipline. We paused rollout and involved them in metric design. Turnover did not disappear. It dropped. Patient complaints improved. Billing denials decreased. More importantly, frontline employees began raising concerns earlier. That was harder to measure and more valuable. I addressed workplace conduct directly. Not only clothing comments, age assumptions, accent jokes, title-based disrespect. We created standards without turning the office into a place where every awkward sentence became a formal case. The goal was not fear. It was awareness and accountability. Brooke struggled. She was talented in project coordination, but used humor to establish social rank. After the announcement, she became excessively careful around me. One day, I asked her to stay after a meeting. You do not have to become silent. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Then say real things instead of jokes about people. She looked embarrassed. I was trying to fit in. With whom? She thought about it. The people I thought were moving up. That honesty mattered. I gave her responsibility for an employee feedback project. At first, staff distrusted her. She listened. She changed. A year later, she apologized again, this time without needing anything. She said, I used clothes as a shortcut to decide who mattered. I answered, most people use some shortcut. The work is noticing it. Tara transferred to finance. We remained professional. Not every relationship becomes meaningful. The receptionist who sent me to the service elevator also apologized. I asked why she had made the assumption. She said executives usually wore visible badges with a different color stripe. My temporary badge lacked one. The cardigan influenced her, but the system also did. We changed visitor and temporary staff instructions, so access did not depend on appearance. That was important. Bias lives in people and processes. Correcting only one allows the other to continue. My daughter Anna found the entire story amusing. You became the boss in orthopedic shoes, she said. They are not orthopedic. They are emotionally orthopedic. I laughed. James would have enjoyed that. He always said I dressed as if expecting to carry a filing cabinet at any moment. After becoming director, several people suggested I update my wardrobe. A leadership coach recommended stronger visual presence. I did buy 2 tailored jackets. Not because my clothes were wrong, because I wanted options. I refused heels. I kept the canvas lunch bag. It became accidentally famous in the office. Carlos gave me a new one for my birthday with the words "Director of Lunch" printed across it. I used it. The story of my clothes could easily become a revenge fantasy. The underestimated woman reveals authority, and everyone feels foolish. There was satisfaction in the announcement. I will not pretend otherwise, but authority did not make the mockery harmless. And embarrassment did not automatically teach anyone. The meaningful part came after. What did I do with the knowledge I gained while people thought I had no power? I could have punished everyone who was rude. I could have surrounded myself only with those who treated me well. That would have repeated the same status system in reverse. Instead, I tried to distinguish cruelty, insecurity, habit, and structural failure. Some people needed consequences. Some needed feedback. Some needed opportunity. Some simply needed distance. Leadership required more than remembering who laughed. It required deciding what response served the organization rather than my pride. I did not always succeed. There were days I enjoyed correcting Brooke too sharply. There were meetings where I dismissed Melissa's ideas because resentment remained. Nicole once told me, "You are being harder on her because she underestimated you." She was right. I adjusted. Accountability also applies upward. 2 years after I joined Harbor Point, David promoted me to oversee operations across 2 divisions. I accepted only after making sure the Mid-Atlantic team had leadership depth. Jasmine became associate director. Priya became director of revenue integrity. Carlos led regional improvement projects. The division no longer depended on one person entering with secret authority. That was the best evidence of progress. I am 55 now. I still wear cardigans. Some are better quality, most are not. My shoes remain comfortable. I have learned that presentation matters, but it should communicate care, not determine worth. There is nothing wrong with beautiful clothes. The problem begins when appearance becomes evidence of competence or entitlement. Melissa's white suit did not make her shallow. My canvas bag did not make me wise. Our choices after being challenged revealed more. Mrs. Lane completed treatment and later sent a letter thanking the scheduling team. She did not mention me. Good. The team solved the problem. Her letter hangs near their desks. Whenever executives visit, I bring them there before showing dashboards. I tell them the division's turnaround began with a patient lost between systems and a scheduler blamed for caring too much. Then I introduce the people who fixed it, by name. That detail matters to me. My coworkers mocked my clothes because they thought I was temporary, ordinary, and safe to dismiss. Then they learned I was their director, but the title was not what made their behavior wrong. It only made the consequences visible. If I had remained a process coordinator, the jokes would still have revealed something about the culture. If I had been a receptionist, assistant, cleaner, or patient, respect would still have been required. That is the lesson I carried into leadership. You should not need to discover someone's hidden authority before deciding to treat them with dignity. And if your kindness changes the moment a title is announced, it was never kindness. It was strategy. I had spent years believing useful work would speak for itself. It does not always. Sometimes leadership must create the room, name the contributor, and make sure the person nearest the problem is not treated as the least important voice. That became my work. Not proving I was better than the people who laughed. Building a workplace where no one had to become director before being heard. That difference changed everything.